Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful August the 28th, 2019. Grondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, there's a lot of NFL players walking around right now a little nervous about did they spend too much money on that gold chain or on that new car, because the final preseason games start tomorrow night, and then the cut-downs are going to start in earnest after that, and they're trying to decide, do I buy or do I rent?
Do I buy or do I rent? And also, when you buy a gold chain, make sure you get a receipt. I remember buying a gold chain in New York City. I said, man, it was about the size of a bicycle chain, Big C. And I thought, man, this is a really good deal. I got it for $15. It was solid gold. By the time I left New York, I looked like the Statue of Liberty, Big C. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. So, Big C, I know a lot of ball players, they wear a lot of gold. In fact, I think you've been known to wear some gold in your days. But I wonder what happened, because my neck turned green and the gold chain turned green. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you got to understand, when you're buying gold is not flexible. It's very solid.
Yeah.
So you got to really test those chains when you buy them. And when they're selling them on the street corner, you know it's not legitimate. Nobody's going to sit out there with that much money invested in gold and say, hey, buy this and I'm going to give you a discount, when you can always take it to a jeweler and get more. Yeah. I mean, gold is an investment. I've invested in it for years,
yep.
You know, in the Cougarans as well as the gold chains. The chains are not an investment, but
right.
The Cougarans are.
Yeah.
The chains are always marked up for the artwork, not the value of the gold.
Yeah, this good old boy. And he said, can you help a brother out? He opened up his trench coat, Big C. He had like 40 chains and some Rolex watches. I knew it probably wasn't real, but it made me feel so powerful. I felt like Mr. T for about 3 days, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I had that Mr. T starter kit, Charlton, when I played ball. One time I walked into the sauna and forgot I had all this metal around my neck. Gold heats up real fast, and all of a sudden I found myself being branched.
Yeah, Brad, it's all fair in love and war. Trying to keep the economy good. But I learned a lesson. In fact, I knew it probably was about a 99% chance that it was not real. I even got a Rolex watch presidential model for $15, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, the president, it all depends on which president it came under.
Yeah, if it's Trump model, it's probably worth $15. But those watches can go from $5,000 to $20,000. It's all fair in love and war. I know a lot of good things happening in the world of baseball. Also, college football. High school football is always on our mind, Big C. It just makes us feel good. Thinking about people as they grow up in life, and sometimes that's the last time they'll play competitive sports. But I do want to say something that you brought to my mind, because even around New York City, you see a lot of people who are on the street, even though you have Wall Street and you have condos that go for, you know, multi-million dollars that people cannot afford. They're still like the movie that Eddie Murphy was in, Trading Places. There's a lot of wealth in New York City, but they have problems also. So if you're a veteran, and even if you're not a veteran, we do have a national suicide hotline number. And we simply want people to program this into your phone. You can dial 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, I still love when you say why that number is so important to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it is very important, Charlton, to have family members that have served in the military and people that I know that have served in the military. And everyone who has served in the military goes through some type of trauma in their lives, Charlton. Yeah. And to be able to come back home after surviving military service and live combat, everyone needs somebody that they can talk to, Charlton. If not on a daily basis, just whenever somebody's available or when they feel the need to talk.
Yeah.
And to have this National Suicide Prevention Hotline number out there, Charlton, available for those veterans and really the layman persons in American society.
Yeah.
When we lose 20 veterans a day, Charlton, to suicide because they feel that there's no help for them, Charlton, they're suffering from PTSD and just can't get the medical help they need, and they feel that they're a threat to themselves and others around them.
Yeah.
And instead of seeking help, Charlton, they've taken their own lives, unfortunately. I want every veteran or somebody who knows a veteran, even if you think this veteran's doing great, mention this number to them, just in case they want to talk to someone and not even share it with you, somebody that they know, that they can talk to someone anonymously, Charlton, and get some psychiatric help that they potentially need.
That's very true. 800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, and 838-255. That's 838-255 for people who want to text. I want to say I love what we're doing with Big C Sports, whether it's New York or California. You can follow Big C Sports all around the world, brought to you by Google and Alexis. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports podcast. And if you're on Google, you'll see the page pop up. If it's Alexa, you'll hear our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. So I really appreciate all of our sponsors for their support. Big C, I want to start tonight talking about Major League Baseball. I know with football getting ready to kick off, and in the second week for college football, it's going to get a lot of attention. And then, of course, when the NFL gets here, there'll be a lot of players that are big-name players that won't be with them at the same time. Major League Baseball. Verlander had gotten a little bit of trouble last night, and he was thrown out of a game. Now, we can't hear all the times what they're saying to an umpire, but I want to get your thoughts, because to me it seemed like he was walking away, but he got in trouble for what he said before he turned and walked away. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, there's always verbal battles between officials and athletes when it comes to professional sports. The thing about most umpires and referees, Charlton, is that they take it personal.
Personal, yeah.
Players, are going to say vitriol throughout a game, whether it's to another player or to a manager, to an ump.
Yeah.
It happens. The umpires can't take it personal.
Yeah.
And when players are starting to spat off against them, Charlton, the umpire has to be the bigger man and walk away.
Walk away, yeah.
It's like Larry Bird said years ago, did you come here to see me? Did you come here did fans come here to see you call fouls on me, or did they come here to see me score points?
Exactly.
The fans bought a ticket because Verlander was pitching on the mound, not because of the umpire behind the plate, Charlton. He has a mask on his face. No one knows who he is. No one really cares. Sit back there, call the game. An umpire should never pass the home plate strike, Charlton.
Yeah.
He should stay behind that plate at all times, regardless of what a player is saying. Just shrug it off.
Yeah.
I know he's human like anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're getting into these spat with players, Charlton, you don't know what you're going to cost the team in the long run.
That's very true. And speaking of costing teams and spats in business, we talk about free enterprise on Big C Sports with California Department of Commerce and also United States Department of Commerce. Well, in Major League Baseball, the Kansas City Royals, I would say a middle market team, owner David Glass, he's negotiating to sell the team to a local businessman, John Sherman, for more than $1 billion. The potential deal, which will be finalized with the transfer of ownership to a group led by Sherman, who is currently a minority owner of the Cleveland Indians. Now, Sherman would divest himself of his shares with the Cleveland Indians to buy the Royals from Glass, who purchased the team in 2000 for $96 million. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's e-commerce when you look at that. When you can have, 100% gain on your investment. You think about it. You buy a team for less than $100 million and you're going to sell it for over $1 billion.
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about 20-year turnaround on your money. So when we're talking about growth in industry, professional sports is doing nothing but growing now.
Yeah.
The economic worth of an owner and the team, Charlton, is just astonishing compared to, you think about when the Kansas City Royals came to Kansas City, Charlton.
Yeah.
And what they probably cost at that time, probably less than $20 million for that franchise.
Yeah.
He bought the franchise for $96. Now he's selling it for over $1 billion. Just 3 or 4 years ago, the Kansas City Royals won the World Series. They were in back-to-back World Series.
Yep.
So they're a franchise of rich history. They've won a couple of World Series over their time since being in Kansas City. And they play in a great complex right there in Kansas City. You got the Chiefs on one side of the parking lot in Arrowhead Stadium. And then you got Kauffman Field where the Royals play. Just one of the more picturesque settings in professional sports.
Yeah, and then downtown they even have a nice arena that used to host the Kings before they moved out to Northern California, Sacramento. I want to ask a thought though, because with the player trying to buy teams, we know people can buy a percentage of ownership. Michael Jordan with Charlotte and then Magic Johnson with the Lakers and Dodgers. But you recall, I think it was Oprah Winfrey, there was, I think, P. Diddy and several other people who were trying as minority owners to buy in, I believe it was the Carolina Panthers. And the league would not sell to them. I think the only minority owner of an NFL franchise is Sean Khan down for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And isn't it ironic that there are no minority-owned NFL teams, but there is a minority owner of one, that's Jacksonville, and how Jay-Z was brought in to the NFL with Roc Nation as a former announced, self-proclaimed drug dealer, but other people or prominents who never sold drugs, as far as we know, were not allowed to buy a team, but they have Roc Nation and Jay-Z becoming a part of the NFL. How does that feel in your stomach, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the NFL has an exclusivity clause, is that as an owner, you have to be an individual owner. They're not selling teams to groups.
Yeah.
Because groups have too many mindsets when it comes to it. When there's an individual sitting at the owner's table, that's why when they have the owners meeting, Charlton, only the owners show up.
Yeah.
And there's 32 of them. They don't want one team having 5 owners sitting there creating a disproportional imbalance at the voting table, Charlton. Every owner sits on groups. It's just like senators. Senators don't bring their conglomerates with them, Charlton, when they're going in and voting on Capitol Hill.
Right.
And this is the same thing that the NFL exclusivity has had. If you have enough money as an individual to come in and buy a team, then they can't stop you from buying a team if somebody wants to sell you the team. But the NFL has an exclusivity clause that says each team is owned by an individual, not a group.
Yeah, I think a lot of that happened outside of basketball. Is different when the Maloofs owned the Sacramento Kings up in Northern California. Their family got rich from beer distinguishers, I think, distilleries, and also Vivek Ranadive. He actually has some investment partners from all over California that helped come and put that money together. There's a gentleman by the name of Burkle who has a lot of money, a billionaire. But I understand how the NFL wants one person, NBA lets groups do it. Major League Baseball, New York Mets first baseman Pete Alonso, the odds-on favorite to win the National League Rookie of the Year. He reached another milestone Tuesday. He set a single-season franchise record. He hit his 42nd home run of the season. Alonso is the first rookie to set the franchise mark for his team since Johnny Rizzo did it for the Pittsburgh Pirates in 1938. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Alonso has had a phenomenal year for the Mets. He's going under the radar. I mean, they've not been a competitor in contention for a pennant for some time, Charlton. But, to have a budding young superstar like Alonso setting a franchise record for home runs as a rookie, Charlton, this means he has a bright and upcoming future. But this is also the trademark that we've seen in Major League Baseball this year. Balls leaving the yard at a record clip.
Yeah.
And just everybody's hitting. And we have several players on pace to hit 50 home runs. We're going to probably get a dozen players to hit at least 40 home runs this season.
Yeah, it's true. And ironically, I was talking to some guys, a gentleman that does a lot of work in the New York market, and we were talking about why baseballs are flying out of the park. They can see Aaron Judge every night almost hit a home run, it seems, or at least every week. And ironically, how the baseball commission, I believe, Manfred, issued a warning to players about PEDs. Now, we think of Frank Thomas, the big guy that always wears black, so he looks a little bit smaller, Big C, but we know Frank Thomas is a big enough guy as it is. But he was also talking about the issue of over-the-counter PEDs. And I want kids to understand it too. But the PEDs that people are getting, we think doctor prescribed or some guy that's on your team. But you go buy gas at a gas station, there's a lot of performance-enhancing things that you can buy for a couple of bucks. And we were laughing, but he knows baseball players are actually using that stuff. So when Manfred came out and made that statement, he wasn't just doing it by guessing. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, no, everybody has known over time that baseball players have constantly found ways to bend the rules and take some type of stimulant.
Bend the rules, good choice
but
of
also,
words.
baseball has been its own stimulant for the past couple of years. You got to understand, baseball bought up the Rawlings Baseball Company.
Yeah.
It is owned by Major League Baseball, so baseball can create the type of ball that will carry even further out of the park, and that's what you've seen this past season with the record number of home runs. When baseball is producing its own product, then you control whether the ball is going to carry or the ball is not going to carry, and they know that fans will be drawn to the ballpark if players are hitting home runs.
Before we get into tonight's schedule, Philadelphia is a very tough place to play. And we were saying, and I want everyone to do well. I just like to have people Google what we say, because if we're wrong, we look stupid. But Bryce Harper, I know the mainstream wants him to be a Barry Bonds, or they want him to be the Mark McGuire, Sammy Sosa, whatever it is. But he's already being booed in Philadelphia. I know he got the $300+ million, but I don't think anyone's worth that money when you can't bat 350. No one can really justify it being worth that. But the guy's not even batting 300. And when he hits a home run, they act as if he hit 2. What are the crowd? Why have they turned on him so fast, Big C, when the media loves everything he does, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that's just the Philadelphia fans, Charlton. They turned on everybody. They turned on Santa Claus, but nobody else really has a chance when you turn on Santa Claus. But Philadelphia is a very knowledgeable city sports-wise, Charlton. They have very fickle fans, and if you're not producing, they're going to let you know about it. It's, the media builds up players, and the media can tear down players.
Yeah.
But the media always wants certain darlings to go out there and make that Madison Avenue public player when they put him on print, put him on billboards.
Yeah.
This guy has to produce. But if you look at it, think about if Harper was having the year that Alonso is having New York.
Yeah.
He would be the rage of Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
But Alonso's been quiet. He's been under the radar. The media has not embraced him like they have Harper. So the media has created images, Charlton, of what they want to sell. This is called marketing 101.
Yeah.
You look at players and they hold on to players, and they're going to make these players better than what they're supposed to be. You look at the season that the Washington Nationals having without Harper. They're in the wild card chase in the National League. They're right on the heels of the Atlanta Braves in the Eastern Division, Charlton. And no one's raving about them as a team that's better with the superstar that they lost.
Do you think that is something, I won't say it's just Philadelphia, but there are a lot of people that don't have the success, and they'll riot behind them. They'll ride it out, Big C, because they want to believe in that player so much. But it just seems like, I want to know from your thoughts, what is it about Harper? Because again, he's one of the guys with $300+ million, $330 million. They want him to be successful. They want to justify how he got that money. But the guy's batting about 250. I mean, 250s, you're striking out over, you're not getting on base over almost 8 times out of 10, and he's worth that much money. So they were stupid for giving him the money. But do you see why it's not just Philadelphia that make any sense? Your thoughts?
Well, this is what baseball is, Charlton. This is what professional sports is. Every player is going out there trying to get as much money as possible. And in Bryce Harper's case, Charlton, the scenario was that he was the biggest name on the free agent market. He was marketable. You also understand that when you sign a player to a big contract like that, your ticket sales are going to go up.
Yeah.
Your merchandising sale is going to go up. So there's plenty of things to offset the contract that you give a player. But you pay players now, Charlton, in sports based on what they've done in the past, not what they're going to do in the future. I don't care whether it's football, basketball, or baseball. Everybody who was out there trying to negotiate a contract, you got NFL players holding out. Well, I've done this already, but there's no guarantee you're going to do that next year. Take a one-year contract. If teams can be just as savvy as players.
Yeah.
If you want to hold a player to the fire, say, look, I'm going to give you a 1 or 2 year deal. That's it. I'm no longer going to sign you to a 5 or 10 year contract. That's the team's stupidity. But the team gets as zealous as the fans do because they sit up and they watch these sports highlight shows, and these sports highlight shows are pushing these players, saying that this guy should get this type of money. He's not going to settle for less than this. Let me put it to you this way. If a team don't offer you money, then you don't get any money. The team is the ultimate decision maker when it comes to what a player gets. As much as a player wants to hold out, not go to training camp, take Jerry Jones, for example, with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott, yes, he's been a dominant running back for 3 years. But Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys have played games without Ezekiel Elliott, when he's been suspended, when he's been hurt, all of these things. The Dallas Cowboys will go on. So for one player to say, if I'm not there,
right,
the team is going to fail, no. The Philadelphia Phillies will play baseball whether Bryce Harper's producing or not.
Well,
so it's the media who makes players bigger than what they are when they're not performing.
That's very true. And I want people to Google this because Big C Sports about Google. Google the guy that's making $330 million, and people get paid on what they did prior years. His career average batting is only .276. For a guy that makes $330 million, that's crazy. This is his 8th year as a major leaguer. He's only batted 300 or above twice. That's twice, and this is his 8th year. That, to me, is a joke for, I think Boris was saying $400 million or he wouldn't sign. I think people should learn to Google that. They'll realize it was a big waste of money. And so the Philadelphia fans, they're right to boo because they probably learned how to Google too. Tonight, New York Yankees at Seattle. That game's already underway. Paxton versus Sheffield on the mound. Pittsburgh at Philadelphia. You have Mitch Keller versus Vince Velasquez already underway. Baltimore at Washington. Atlanta at Toronto. I really like the way Atlanta is coming on strong. Chicago, the Cubs at New York Mets, Big C. You have Cleveland at Detroit, Cincinnati at Miami, Minnesota at Chicago. You have Tampa. They're playing at Houston. And Houston, I'm telling you, they had a good beatdown in their game yesterday. Don't want to see guys like, Verlander being tossed out of a game because he has a few things to say with his mouth. And also, another big series. You have Oakland at Kansas City. And there's something about the A's. They look like a team that's destined for the playoffs, but it still saddens me. I shouldn't say saddens me, but when I watch the Coliseum crowd, for baseball it's even been trimmed down to about 35,000. But I challenge myself to even see if they have 25,000 showing up at a game for a team that's challenging. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you got to look at when baseball is being played. You're playing games midweek. School has just started back, so you can't get the young kids going to the baseball parks this time of the year, Charlton, because they have school the next day.
Yeah.
People are working. They're back to work. They're off for summer vacation. This is the toughest time to draw a baseball crowd during this part of the season, Charlton, midweek, because of everything that's going on in personal lives with people.
Yeah, well, I think in that stadium, Kauffman's a great place. Too small market. Oakland's not a small market. I'll take that back. The Bay Area is number 4th largest market in the country, but looking forward to the A's getting to the playoffs. Boston at Colorado, the LA Dodgers at San Diego, and they got right last night. Texas at Los Angeles Angels, and then a matchup game, St. Louis at Milwaukee. So I look forward to a lot of good baseball coming down the stretch as we clear August and get into the month of September. There will be a big push for the chase in October. I want to start down south, Big C. I know this the talk of a hurricane coming off the southern Atlantic. I don't know if it's going to affect a lot of teams coming up by the weekend. I hope it does not. But when will the great city of Miami win another championship? If you recall, the great Miami Dolphins, 2-time Super Bowl champions, 1973 and 74, they had the only undefeated team from regular season to the Super Bowl in the NFL. Florida Marlins, 2-time World Series champions, 1997 and 2003. The Miami Heat, mostly because of LeBron James, 3-time NBA champions, 2006, 2012, and 2013. And then the University of Miami Hurricanes, 5-time NCAA football champions, 1983, 1987, 1989, 1991, and 2001. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about the Miami Hurricanes, they were like the New England Patriots of college football with that dominant run that they had in the 80s and 90s, Charlton.
Yeah.
They just changed the landscape of college football so much that the NCAA had to step in and change even the way that Miami played football. But you think about a once great sports city.
Amazing.
The Miami area, when the Dolphins were a dominant team in the NFL, Dan Marino made it to the Super Bowl once, even though he didn't win it. You think about the Miami Heat. They've had 5 trips to the NBA Final.
Yeah.
The University of Miami, we look at the number of championships they won as a football team down there. The Marlins had been totally dismantled by Derek Jeter after winning 2 World Series before they built that new stadium downtown.
That's
when they
right.
once played out in Fort Lauderdale with the Dolphins. But you think about how the epic flow of various cities have gone in professional sports. It's like the city of New York. Other than the Yankees, there's really been no representation. The Giants won a decade ago. But other than that, it's been a lot of doldrums in that city. But, Miami was just one of the greatest fan cities in the world when you think about it. They hosted Super Bowls as well as winning Super Bowls. They've had it all down there.
Yeah.
But they've run on hard times. When LeBron left, it's been tough time for the Heat. We don't know if the Marlins will even stay in Major League Baseball as bad as they're playing.
Oh, I know it.
The University of Miami is trying to make attempts to come back, even though they fell short against Florida in that opening week.
Yeah.
They're still a couple of years away. So it's going to be some tough sledding down in the city of Miami.
Yeah, there's a lot of great sports played down in Miami, but it would be nice to see them win another championship eventually, that city. Major League Baseball with 21 home runs. Jordan Alvarez is just one home run shy of tying the Astros franchise record for a rookie. Think about what he's done. The record is currently held by Carlos Correa, who hit 22 home runs in 2015 when he was named Rookie of the Year. In addition to Correa, the only other Astros rookie to hit 21 home runs was Lance Berkman in the year 2000. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about the number of rookies, Charlton, that have been hitting home runs in Major League, and just young players. They've come up. I mean, the ball is just flying out of the diamond.
Yeah.
Baseball is great. It has a great future with all the young budding superstars. I mean, we've fallen in love with the players that we recognize and not paying attention to the young, great players that are coming along.
Yeah, that's very true, Big C. Now I told you actually in New York when I bought the gold chain, and it lasted for about 3 days, and then my neck turned all green and the chain turned green, and I can't find the receipt because the guy didn't give me a receipt. He just said a brother will hook you up, so I guess that's what the hookup means, Big C. But Aaron Judge, he became the third fastest player in Major League Baseball history to reach 100 home runs, and the New York Yankees dominated the Seattle Mariners 7-0. That's a good old boy that played at Fresno State, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Aaron Judge has been on a tear as of late. You know, he's fallen off from his rookie year in Major League Baseball where he hit over 50 home runs. But he's had some injuries, and that's what has happened to a lot of players in Major League Baseball. But the last month and a half, he's been on a tear, and then the Yankees have just dominated the American League East.
Does he remind you, because obviously when we talk about Aaron Judge, and we were talking about Bryce Harper, I think someone would have to be a knucklehead to think that Harper's worth more money than Aaron Judge. And I don't mean flippantly when I say this. One person is a mainstream-looking Caucasian guy, and the other is a biracial, so they'll call him African American. But if you see one guy come to the plate, no one in the universe can tell me that Harper is more imposing than Aaron Judge, Big C. You be the judge, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Aaron Judge, I mean, the way he hit Major League Baseball by storm a couple of years ago, Charlton, and that, horrific, rookie season that he had, hitting 52 home runs. I mean, you pay players based on what they've done. I mean, if he was being paid based on his rookie campaign, Charlton, he'd be one of the highest paid players in baseball.
Yeah.
But he wasn't that guy, where his contract was up, so the Yankees have him at a bargain. And if you look at the Yankees lineup, if what they've done productivity-wise, Charlton, if you were to pay them based on their performance, they would have the highest payroll in all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, so I just ask people, Google when Judge is playing or when Harper's playing, and you tell me which one. Maybe he should have called Boris Big C. Maybe you could change agents. It's just amazing how things happen. Walker Buehler dominated the San Diego Padres, striking out 11, allowing only 4 hits in a 9-0 LA Dodgers shutout. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is a team that has a 21-lead game in their division, Charlton. And after being stung by the New York Yankees over the weekend, they've come back out with a fist of fury and jumped up on a division rival's Padres, Charlton, and just shut them out.
Yeah, and just a side note, too, before we get to the Big C timeout, there is a lot of rumors going around Los Angeles that there are a lot of Dodgers that are also, their necks are turning green. I guess that guy that sold me the gold chain came out to Chavez Ravine, so a lot of people have been wondering if they get their money back. I don't know if they can. What we're going to do now is come up with what's called the Big C pause. We're going to come back and talk more about things that are going on in sports, and we hope that you'll join us, and we'll be right back in just a moment. All right, we are back on Big C Sports after the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause, and I really appreciate where we're headed with Big C Sports, just the growth that we're having, and in fact, Big C Sports is part of the artificial intelligence that I even heard a news radio station talk about this morning in Northern California. Even hospitals are starting to downsize because computers can do billing better than some good old girl or good old boy behind the counter, Big C. We just talked about it. Now some of the major hospitals are heading that direction. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on an app called iHeartRadio and Comcast Xfinity. If you have a television set, you can follow Big C Sports on that. And you can follow us on YouTube. What I really like is the app by Alexa. Just say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic. and he'll do his thing. And so I really appreciate the growth of Big C Sports. But Big C, I also want to ask you, as a Southern boy, I know a lot of times guys in the South, they're slow to change. From what I understand, what do you feel about artificial intelligence and Googling to get your paper, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, artificial intelligence is something that's been around forever. I mean, we don't change things overnight. We like to wait up until the last minute.
Yeah.
And that's just a way of life for a lot of people that are set in their ways. Artificial intelligence, we've always recognized that it's been a part of American and world society. It's just a matter of how you want to integrate with it. I mean, we do artificial intelligence every day that we do this show.
Yeah.
Every time you turn on a computer, artificial intelligence has been there. So to think that artificial intelligence hasn't been a part of your everyday life for the last 50 years in America, you turn on the television, that's artificial intelligence.
I know when I was a young boy, I remember I got in trouble because I unscrewed the TV and I took all the screws out of the back because I wanted to go inside and see, where are these people? And I couldn't see them, and I think I got a couple of tongue lashes for that, Big C, but I learned my lesson. Also, back to the world of Major League Baseball. Houston Astros rookie Yordan Alvarez, he homered twice as the Houston jumped on former teammate Carlos Moulton to whip the Tampa Bay Rays. It was 15-1. I thought I was watching football, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's almost like a Canadian football league, Charlton, where you can get that 1 point off that rouge.
Yeah.
So that's what it seemed like. But the Rays, they're trying to keep pace with the New York Yankees for that wild card berth, but they're not going to do it, getting beat 15-1.
No, 15-1. But somebody was getting paid. I mean, the team that only gave up one run, the defense said, you can't get mad at us, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, they couldn't get mad at all, but the ump got mad at Justin Verlander.
Yeah, they had to have a distraction for that. Minnesota Twins, Marvin Gonzalez and Jonathan Scoop hit solo homers in the second inning. And Michael Padilla, he gave up one run in the Twins' 3-1 victory over the Chicago White Sox, which also for a large city of Chicago, the White Sox get no support, Big C. Your thoughts?
They get no support, and the Twins are holding on to that slim lead in the AL Central, Charlton, and they're also leading the American League in home runs this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's Chicago. You talked about Miami being a great sports city. I remember being in Chicago, and I mean, I saw a bar fight in Chicago because some guys were fighting over who had some guy spilled a beer in someone's foot. That's no reason to fight, but it's a great sports city. And after the fight was over, would you believe the bartender offered the guy who won the fight a drink? Does that make any sense, Big C?
Well, if you offer him a drink, you're going to have a patron for life, Charlton, because he knows he can come there, and if he gets into a ruckus, he's always going to be accommodated.
Yeah, you thought you had to go to a real MMA arena to see you fighting, but you can see it sometime in a bar in Chicago. It's crazy up there. St. Louis Cardinals catcher Yadier Molina hit 2 home runs in the National League leading St. Louis Cardinals went on to a 6-3 victory over the Milwaukee Brewers that are having a hard time looking at a playoff spot, even wild card, with the way they're getting beaten up at times. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about the Brewers. They have one of the best players in baseball in Christian Yelich, but not even his bat could keep pace with the Cardinals. And Yadier Molina last night, Charlton, hitting those 2 home runs to keep the Redbirds on the top of the NL Central.
Yeah, it's amazing how it happens, but it's all fair in love and war. What I want to do is, because I'm so passionate about a lot of things that happen in sports, and I love what happens even in the world of politics, being at the state capitol yesterday. But I want to touch on a few things that are going on in the world of sports. We talk about college football, even high school football, and then pro football. But I want to do something that's kind of special to me right now. When you think about football players, the NFL's greatest 24 all-time players, and it's not based on championships. You know, there's a lot of guys that are great that don't have a championship ring, whether it's football, basketball, or baseball. But I want to get some players, and I just want you to give me your thoughts. People don't have to agree, but they can definitely Google the players we talk about. If you think about the NFL's greatest 24 players of all time, whether they have a championship or not, I'm going to throw out quarterback Drew Brees for the Saints, and I want to get your thoughts because a lot of people may not agree with that, Big C. Your thoughts?
You're going to get a lot of people say, no, Drew Brees is not the greatest quarterback of all time. Everybody wants to debate between Brady and Montana.
Yeah.
Terry Bradshaw is the only quarterback to go to the Super Bowl and have 4 wins and 4 trips there, Charlton.
Yeah.
And no one ever considers him the great. The reason why I say that Drew Brees would be the greatest quarterback in the NFL is that you look at what he has accomplished as an individual.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the greatest in a position, we're not talking about the greatest on a team. Drew Brees holds all the NFL passing records. That makes him the single most greatest quarterback to play in this great league.
Yep.
Not having 6 Super Bowl rings, not having 4 Super Bowl rings, but having the individual records. That's what makes somebody the greatest.
I don't think many people would argue with a guy he could throw to. That's Jerry Rice, another HBC athlete, Big C.
Jerry Rice, we all know him as a phenomenal receiver. He holds all the individual receiving records. And we talked about individual. He holds all of those. So no one can ever doubt the accomplishments of Jerry Rice. And he did it with 3 different organizations in the NFL, Charlton, and will never be eclipsed as far as the numbers that he's put up.
Nah, he was amazing. Not the fastest guy, not the biggest guy, and he couldn't even catch when he first got into the league, but he worked himself into the Hall of Fame. Big C, wide receiver Don Hutson. Might be a name a lot of people don't even know. Big C, your thoughts?
Don Hutson is that name because he wasn't playing football in a highlight TV era, Charlton.
Yeah.
Don Hutson of the Green Bay Packers led the NFL in receiving for 6 consecutive seasons. No other receivers ever done that, Charlton, to lead a league for 6 consecutive years. Not only that, Charlton, he was winning NFL titles up in Green Bay on that frozen tundra.
On that frozen tundra. Also, when you think about Barry Sanders for the Lions, people talk about Andrew Luck walking away too soon. Barry was smarter than him because Barry walked away while he could still walk away. Big C, your thoughts?
Barry Sanders, and there will always be debates about the greatest running backs to ever play in the NFL. People will say Jim Brown, they'll say Walter Payton, they'll say Emmitt Smith. Barry Sanders, to me, epitomized what a great running back was. Barry Sanders lost more yards rushing than any running back in NFL history, and yet he was number 3 on the all-time list when he retired, Charlton. So this is what people don't understand about Barry Sanders' greatness. If you took those yards that he lost, over 4,000, Charlton, he'd have over 20,000 yards rushing in the NFL.
Amazing.
Barry Sanders, you couldn't tackle his butt in a damn phone booth, okay? He embarrassed every defensive player in the NFL. That's what made Barry Sanders so great.
Yeah, they couldn't even, that NFL commercial where they had, I think it was Beast Mode that tried to get the football off the cake. It was a butter cake also, and they had Jim Brown and Montana and Rice, so many players. They couldn't tackle Barry Sanders even in the commercial, Big C. I thought that guy was amazing.
To me, like I said, he epitomized what you wanted in a football player. He was very humble. He never spiked the football after scoring a touchdown, Charlton. He was a classy gentleman when he played. He's what you want to have in an NFL player.
Yeah, I thought the class of Barry Sanders was second to none. Marcus Allen, another running back. I thought he was so great. He played quarterback in high school down in San Diego, Big C. And then at USC, he actually blocked for a Heisman Trophy winner Charles White, but then became one of the best running backs in the history of the NFL. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, people misunderstand the greatness of Marcus Allen as a running back in the NFL, how effective he was. He sat on the shelf for 3 years with the Oakland Raiders where he got very little playing time prior to going to Kansas City. When he retired from the NFL, he held the scoring record for running backs. He held the record for most touchdowns scored by a running back. He has Super Bowl trophies, 2 of those, Charlton, with the Oakland Raiders. This guy was nothing but a productive player when he was in the NFL with the Raiders and the Chiefs. He was a great running back out of the backfield. When you look at the total yards that he had prior to getting to Canton, Ohio, Charlton, they equaled any running back in the NFL at that time.
Now, he is amazing, Big C. Now, you need guys to block for you when you have that kind of skill. Anthony Munoz, left tackle for the Bengals. He's my choice, Big C. Your thoughts?
Anthony was just nasty. Here's a guy who was a Mexican-American, Charlton, playing in the NFL. Donald Trump today would not want him in the league. But, Anthony was epitomized what a great lineman was. Even when he was at USC, the guy worked through a wealth of injuries, Charlton, as a collegiate and a professional player. But on Sunday, he showed up, and every defensive end knew they were going to have a long, tough day.
Played at Muller High School, Cincinnati, also the University of Southern California Trojans. There's another guy that's amazing. Guard Bruce Matthews played for the Oilers down on that really bad turf down in Texas. Big C, your thoughts?
Bruce Matthews epitomized what a professional offensive lineman was, Charlton, and he did it for 20 years. That's the thing about what made Bruce so great. You think about 20 years playing in the pit, taking that pounding, 16 games at a year, Charlton, for 20 years, and being a steadfast heart of that Houston Oilers franchise, Charlton, blocking for greats like Earl Campbell, Warren Moon. This guy did it all. He saw it all as an Oiler.
As an Oiler. How about center? Now, people may not agree with this because we hear about guys like Webster, but I think Dwight Stevens for the Miami Dolphins, Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Dwight Stevens out of the University of Alabama, Charlton, he changed and revolutionized the center position. No one that ever played that position who had been as quick or as strong as Dwight Stevens. A lot of people remember Mike Webster, who played with the Steelers. People will think about Jim Otto because of the heyday of the Oakland Raiders when he played. But Dwight Stevens, his career was cut short like Terrell Davis of the Denver Broncos with a catastrophic knee injury, Charlton.
Yeah.
But during his time in the NFL, he was the most dominant player snapping the football.
What about another player that I thought was highly acclaimed, but still maybe not in the pantheon of the great athletes as he should be? Guard Randall McDaniel for the Minnesota Vikings. Big C, your thoughts?
You're talking about somebody who had a nasty attitude, and that was Randall. Randall was mean. I mean, he was one of those guys that would get after you. And, I mean, we talk about a wealth of guards that played in the NFL. Everybody talked about Larry Allen, how great Larry Allen was. Randall was Larry before Larry got there. John Hanna, who played in New England. But New England never did anything while John Hanna was there offensively. You think about the offensive line that Randall played with. They set an NFL rushing record with Robert Smith, actually a team scoring record, but they had the NFL's leading passer, 2 NFL's leading receivers, and running back all on the same team, Charlton, with Randall McDaniel blocking.
Yeah, he is an amazing player. Big C, right tackle Jackie Slater for the Rams. I thought he was as dominant as they come. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, not a big-name player, Charlton, but just like with Matthews, 20 years in the pits in the NFL. Played with the greatest show on turf with the Rams, blocked for that great group of offensive characters, Charlton. He was the leader of that offensive line. He blocked for Eric Dickerson while the Rams was playing in Los Angeles. So you think about the time that he blocked for players, great players in that Rams organization at their heyday in L.A. and also during their heyday in St. Louis.
When you think about guys that can catch the ball, tight end, and again, everybody has their own choice. And I know he just got into the Hall of Fame. But I still think Tony Gonzalez for the Chiefs and also Falcons. I remember he played basketball at Cal Berkeley as well as football, and now to become a Hall of Famer when he was one of the better players on the Cal basketball team. Also a Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Tony Gonzalez was a pure athlete, Charlton. He helped revolutionize the position of tight end. And if you think about the time when he came into the game, as the tight end position was purely evolving and the great competitors that he had to go against. But he stood head and shoulders above all the tight ends in the NFL, Charlton. Even up until the end of his career with the Falcons, he was still playing at an all-pro caliber.
And it's amazing. He talked about overcoming his fear for his great Hall of Fame speech. Just because you're afraid, it doesn't mean you don't do something. You just feel the fear and push through it anyway. Kicker Adam Vinatieri, as much as he's kicked solid game-winning field goals, he may not be the reason that people think his team's won. New England can credit him, even though they say Tom Brady has 6 championships. I think you can call Alan Vinatieri. He's one of the players where the tuck rule was in play in Boston when they cheated the Raiders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Adam Vinatieri was the key reason why the New England Patriots won their first 3 Super Bowls. He kicked the game-winning points, Charlton, in those 3 games, but he has gone on to even more success with the Indianapolis Colts. He's won a Super Bowl there, Charlton, and not only that, he holds every scoring record in the NFL for a kicker. You think about longevity, it's been a part of his life. They're talking about quarterbacks playing into their 40s with Brady's and Breeze. Adam Vinatieri is well into his 40s, Charlton, and still kicking strong in the NFL.
Let me take you over to the side of the ball that you love. I know, just like I've been to some of your rib cookouts, Big C, and there's like this one rib on the plate left, but there's 5 former offensive linemen that want to grab it. I don't know who wins, but I know that meat's pretty torn up. Defensive end, Deacon Jones for the Rams. He's a guy that might have been the last guy to grab the meat. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, David Deacon Jones, the Minister of Defense, Charlton, he struck fear into every offensive tackle that he saw in his NFL career. He invented the move called the head slap. They did not count sacks when Deacon played in the NFL. But if they did, he would have had over 200. But he was a perennial All-Pro, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL, Charlton, and just a great motivator of young men. People wanted to play with that fearsome foursome that they had in the Rams that he was the ringleader of.
Big C, describe on the people how if Deacon Jones came to Big C's barbecue, and you got some other big athletes there. Would you put your eyes on Deacon Jones coming up with that last rip? Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Deacon was cat quick, Charlton, when he played defensive end. I mean, he set the table for what other defensive ends have become today.
Yeah, I think he would have slapped the rib out of somebody's head, Big C, that's for true. Another guy that can slap the ribs out of your hand, defensive tackle, the late Reggie Wright, the Minister of Defense, inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, Reggie epitomized what you wanted in a quality of a person as well as a football player, Charlton. He cared about his opponents as much as he cared about his teammates. He was a guy who went out and he played the game the right way. When he was in Philadelphia prior to going to Green Bay, Charlton, and reaching the pinnacle of the Super Bowl before getting into the Hall of Fame post-mortem after his death, Charlton. But Reggie was a guy that you wanted to be around and have a conversation with also.
I think about another player, defensive tackle, Mean Joe Green for the Steelers. What I recall, I told you when I was a young boy, I tried to take the TV. In fact, I took it apart. I wanted to see how do they put those people at the TV. That's before I learned to read, Big Z. But I also remember buying a Coca-Cola, and I tried to swallow the whole thing nonstop like he did in that commercial, and it burned my throat. I think that's a little bit of what they call artificial intelligence, CGI. Big Z, your thoughts on Mean Joe Green?
Well, when you think about Joe Green, Charlton, he was the cornerstone of that great Steelers franchise of the 70s. He was Chuck Knowles, one of his first draft picks, Charlton, out of Texas State. He went on to become the most dominant defensive tackle in pro football during the 70s and leading that great Steelers defense, the Steel Curtain, Charlton. But Joe was just a gentle giant on and off the field. But when the ball was snapped, he was a guy that you could not control.
Didn't want to control him. Defensive end, Bruce Smith. And it's a shame, as good as he was, no Super Bowl championships. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, Bruce retired from the great game, Charlton, being the NFL's all-time leading sack leader. 4 consecutive Super Bowls with the Buffalo Bills, a perennial All-Pro prior to ending his career with the Washington Redskins, Charlton, and getting into the NFL Hall of Fame. But there's been no better pass rusher in NFL history than Bruce Smith.
Let me give you another guy, outside linebacker, Bobby Shell for the Chiefs. I know that's going back in the day of Big C, but he was legit.
Well, when you think about Bobby Bell, Charlton, this was one of those players that came out of Grambling. Bobby Bell, perennial All-Pro. When you think about him playing with the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl I and Super Bowl IV, Charlton, he's in the NFL Hall of Fame also. But you talk about a tremendous athlete that could cover any running back out of the backfield as well as get after the quarterback, Charlton. Bobby Bell could do it all. He was a complete player.
Another complete player. I want winners. Give me guys who can win. And he got criticized as a 49er coach. The great Mike Singletary, part of that great 85 Bears defense, I think as far as linebackers, wasn't the biggest, wasn't the fastest, but those eyes could sack you alone. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about middle linebackers and you think about all the great players that have played that position throughout the history of the NFL, I think Mike Singletary epitomizes what the position requires. It requires a leader, a leader amongst men, and that's what Mike Singletary was. When you talk about leading by example, he never backed down from anybody. Wasn't the largest linebacker to ever play the game, Charlton, but there wasn't one who played the game with a bigger heart. And that 85 Bear team, Charlton, he demonstrated all of that.
No, he was all of that and a little bit more, Big C. I think about a kid out of Oceanside, California. The late Junior Seau also played for the mighty USC Trojans. And then, you know, his NFL career was great, especially when he got over to the Chargers and also with the Patriots, Big C. Your thoughts on the late Junior Seau?
Junior Seau, I mean, you know, when you talk about a linebacker that you want to put into a mold and clone it, Charlton, and just send it around to everybody, Junior Seau epitomized that. A 20-year NFL career, Charlton, playing at the highest level that you could as a perennial All-Pro with the Chargers and doing that same role with the New England Patriots, Charlton. Junior Seau was one of the greatest athletes to ever play in the NFL.
Amazing. And he used to lock himself in the weight room and got bigger, stronger, and faster. Cornerback, Mike Haynes for the Raiders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, everybody talks about the modern-day defensive back and the guys that, you know, they can market and they have the big contracts and they have the commercials. Mike Haynes was a shutdown corner out of Arizona State. He was a first-round draft pick of the Boston Patriots. He subsequently was traded to the Oakland Raiders, Charlton, where he played on a couple Super Bowl championship teams out there with the Raiders. He teamed with Lester Hayes to make one of the more formidable cornerback tandems in the NFL, Charlton.
I think another great guy in the backfield. Cornerback Rod Woodson for the Steelers also had some time with the Raiders. Not as big as I thought when I met the guy. I thought he was a taller man than what he is, but he was a dominant player defensively. Big, so your thoughts?
Well, you think about Rod Woodson, Charlton, out of the University of Purdue, first-round draft pick of the Pittsburgh Steelers. This guy ended his NFL career with 76 interceptions. Not only was he a dominant cornerback with the Steelers, Charlton, he ended up his career with the Ravens at safety. So he was a multifaceted defensive player, but he shut players down regardless of which position he was playing.
Well, there's another safety. He just go by the name of Ken, played for the Houston Oilers. And again, the players that played for the Oilers, they were playing down there in the dome, but the turf was horrible. But he was still able to cover receivers. Big, see your thoughts.
Well, Ken Houston, another one of those dominant defensive backs, Charlton, from one of those HBC schools, ended his NFL career with 47 interceptions playing at the safety position. And you think about a player with 47 interceptions during that time, Charlton, when the league wasn't pass happy. It was a run-dominant league. Ken Houston was a savage, though, at safety. He would hit anybody.
Yeah, he would hit anybody, Big C. Another guy that would hit anybody, and have a lot of respect for him, especially he may have the coolest-looking bust in the Hall of Fame. Out of the U, the great Ed Reed as a safety. I don't think many people were better than this Ravens All-Star. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, Ed Reed, to me, Charlton, I think is the most intelligent safety to ever play in the NFL. This guy took control of a great defense. You think about the all-pros that played on that Ravens defense, even when they shut out the Giants basically in the Super Bowl when they knocked them out, and then when they came back and had their second Super Bowl victory against the 49ers.
Yeah.
Ed Reed was a ball hawk. He was all over the field. There was no quarterback in the NFL that was more intelligent than Ed Reed. He knew what a quarterback was going to run even before the snap of the ball, and he executed it well, Charlton, and he deservedly made it to Kent.
Yeah, obviously, it just deservedly so. A star player and a classy guy throughout his career. When you got to punt the ball away because you want a good field position, so you want to pin your opponent back deep in their own territory, I don't think there was none better than the great Ray Guy for the Raiders. Big C, your thoughts?
You know, the Raiders, Charlton, is the only organization to draft two kickers in the first round. Ray Guy was the first one that they drafted in the first round. Three-time Super Bowl champion Ray Guy, Charlton. He epitomized what kicking was. He played quarterback and punter at Southern Mississippi University, Charlton. Al Davis made him just a punter with the Raiders because he was such a weapon. You talk about hang time. He created that in the NFL, where they started tracking hang time on a kicker, Charlton, leading the NFL in punting several years before making it to the Hall of Fame. Ray Guy is one of the greatest kickers to ever put on an NFL uniform.
Yeah, and there's something about that, Sylvan. And he did it in the era of Stickum, so he probably had to have new footballs every time he was trying to punt if the defense got a turnover before them big feet. So that's just our thoughts when you think about some of the greatest players, offensively or defensively. It's not based on whether they won a championship or not. Now, I know all over the country there's a lot of people looking at football teams, and with football, is CTE really an issue? Are players going to be kept out of the league? And even at the high school level, I just want to read out a few things, and then I'm going to get your thoughts on some college football programs. College football, it drives the economy as much as any sport in the world. One of the reasons why, you have multiple games on TV, Division I and II. Now even high school football has dipped into that TV and radio package. It's the greatest revenue-producing sport, and you do not have to pay the players, even though they make money from the gate. They make money from the car dealerships, from the TV revenue, from the radio revenue, advertising, and the only people that have to pay are the people who are not out there making the money. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I mean, revenue, you talked about e-commerce, what you were talking about yesterday on the program.
Yep.
Sports has always been e-commerce. I mean, from day one of college football when it was formed 150 years ago. And they started selling tickets and entrance into the arenas or the stadiums, whatever you wanted to call them in those days, Charlton. It generated revenue. It's always been a part of the history of collegiate sports.
Yeah.
Is that you're going to pay to see these young men go out and play. And it's in all collegiate sports, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, track and field. You have to pay an entry fee. But this is just something that the players have never fought back against. I mean, we can always talk about how much money that the universities are generating, the conferences are generating. But you think about collegiate players, Charlton, they have the same opportunity that professional players have. If they ever wanted to go on a universal strike, they could go that.
Yeah.
They could hold the NCAA ransom for income. They choose not to do that. I don't know if it's because of lack of leadership or direction, but they have that right to do that. If they all sit there collectively and say opening game of the season, opening week of the season,
yeah,
we're not going to play, what choice would the NCAA have other than to pay them?
Yeah, they pay them the money. In fact, when you look at the top college football producing states, you look at California alone. It's the largest state in the union. In California, since 2015, there are 12,000 fewer kids playing high school football. 12,000. And in the last two national championships, programs have come out of California, modern-day high school.
But you realize why there's less kids playing high school football in California? It's what you talked about, those national championship teams that come out of there. Those are not high school teams, Charlton. Those are prep teams that people have put together in certain communities. So you get a lot of kids saying, I don't have a chance to be competitive. I'm going to go out here and get beat up for somebody to get a national ranking.
Yep.
So those teams have made it bad for high school football. When you go out and you take the best of the kids, just like when we talked about the Negro Leagues being disbanded because Branch Rickey wanted to integrate for revenue, not for ethnicity. He wanted to integrate for revenue. That's what these preparatory high school teams have done across the country. When you go out there and you see a team that hasn't lost a game in 5 years, and your best season in the last 5 years that you're playing this team, you won 5 or 6 games, you don't have a chance to beat them.
Yeah, it's
so
amazing.
This has been discouraging and disparaging for a lot of young kids not wanting to play high school football.
That's very true. Even in that same league, the Trinity League in Southern California, modern-day high school in St. John Bosco, they're ranked number 1 and number 3 in the country. They're less than 30 miles apart. They're in the same conference, but they all can recruit. Also, if you look at Florida, there are programs in Florida where also participation's down. And we talked about when will Miami win another championship, no matter what sport for that city. Florida kids as young as 5 years old, 5, are being taught how to play tackle football. At the high school levels, the numbers are dwindling. Also, another great state for high school football, Ohio. Even though the numbers are down, they still have a stadium, seats over 100,000, and where the Buckeyes play. And then New Jersey, if you look at New Jersey up in the Northeast, 4,000 less kids have played high school football in the last 6 years. A lot of people are going on to play soccer and other sports that are not as dangerous. And I love just bringing that to you, whether it's high school football, college football, NFL football, we'll bring it all to you on Big C Sports. I know that I love saying this because it's true. If you have any form of technology, that's where the world is going. We talked about the G7 summit. Everybody's going to technology. They don't need people. Back in the day when you wanted to talk to someone, I think they had these party line phones with the Opera plug-in, or even the days where people would write a letter so you could send that letter to somebody. Now they just text it and you have it immediately. And we're part of that artificial intelligence. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow us on YouTube. If you have that app in your home by Alexa, say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I'll introduce Big C at the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate the growth of Big C Sports. So I just challenge everybody, tell a friend about Big C Sports. All you do is say, Google Big C Sports, or ask Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. And I really appreciate the support. Big C, in our final segment, if you look at the worst 12 teams to start the 2019 season, I'm going to offer Big C's worst teams to start 2019. I know oftentimes they don't look at the abyss. They look at the people at the top of the universe, Big C. But let's look at number 12, University of Massachusetts. They're 4-8. Number 11, Oregon State. They're 2-10. Number 10, I would say number 9 is Bowling Green. They were 3-9. We'll go down to Rutgers, 1-11. That team joined the Big Ten, and they added to their stadium a couple of years ago. Louisville, 2-10. Central Michigan, 1-11. And we'll get your thoughts before I finish the others. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, everybody wants to talk about the heralded programs in college football. They want to talk about the top 10 all the time. The top 5, the teams that are going to compete for the national champions, the teams that are in the Power 5 conference. But you have to understand, those teams, even the worst teams in college football, Those young men hope to be competitive on every Saturday afternoon, Charlton. They go through spring ball just like everybody else. They work just as hard as everybody else. They may not have the elite athletes from across the country, but they nevertheless go out and compete wearing their team's colors, representing their universities, Charlton, and wanting to have a future potentially in that great sport of professional football.
That's very well said. Also, some more teams on the list. New Mexico State, 3-8. Kent State, 2-10. You have the great San Jose State Spartans. They're in the heart of Silicon Valley. People say programs need money, and money builds programs. You can't find a place in you can't find a place in the country that has more money than Silicon Valley. In fact, I believe 3 of the 10 richest people in the world are from the Bay Area. And you would think of a program like San Jose State, not Stanford or Cal Berkeley, but a state-run school in Silicon Valley would have money like the University of Texas. But Big C, 1-10 last year. UConn, 1-11. Rice, down there in Texas, 2-11. And UTEP, University of Texas El Paso, 1-11. Big C, money doesn't always solve problems. Your thoughts?
Well, if that was the case, Charlton, then you would have 3 dominant universities right there in the part of California where you're talking about.
That's right.
You would have Stanford, you would have Cal, and you would have San Jose State. All of those schools are probably within 60 miles of each other.
Yep.
But when you think about them, that none of those have ever been competitive on the national scale as far as a potential getting to the national championship playoffs.
Yep.
They're playing in the abyss. So it's not all about money and artificial intelligence being in a particular area because they're all around the heart of Silicon Valley.
Yep.
It's about being able to get the elitist athletes, Charlton. Coaches get the job done, but can you get enough competitive athletes on your roster?
Yeah, they got to learn that thing they do down south. Why do they shake hands in the South under the table? In California, they get the hands on top of the table when they shake hands. Big C, can you expound, please?
Well, you don't want to get up in somebody's face, so you shake hands under the table, let you know that you're a gentleman, and anything that they can do for you, they will do. But, they also find ways to get the best athletes. When you think about sports in the South versus sports in the West, Charlton, football in the South is a religion. You think about this. Have you ever sit in a Pac-12 stadium and heard anybody say Pac-12, Pac-12? No, you haven't.
No.
If you sit in an SEC stadium, Charlton, everybody in the stands will say SEC.
Yeah.
SEC. It is the only conference in America other than the ACC. Those two conferences, the ACC and the SEC, Charlton, the fans chant in the stadiums, whether it's football or basketball.
Yeah.
You don't get it in the Big Ten, you don't get it in the Big 12, and you don't get it in the Pac-12. So football fans are loyal in the South where they're wayward elsewhere.
Yeah, well, I think the Pac-12 commissioner start earning, learn the value of under-the-table handshakes and sometimes pass something along in the back, too, and you might start keeping some of the top athletes. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, tomorrow, Charlton, is going to be a very exciting night in football. It's going to be the final weekend of NFL preseason games, Charlton. Also, the first full weekend of college football kicks off in earnest tomorrow night, Thursday.
Well, Thursday it kicks off, and everybody's having fun getting this. It feels like Hump Wednesday, but I know a lot of guys keep talking about football as if it kicks off tonight. But it does kick off tomorrow night, and you can kick off with it too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.